Lesson 8.9, quadratic formula. Alright, quadratic formula. This whole chapter we've been learning how to solve quadratic equations, and we've learned how to solve those by using graphing, factoring, square roots, and completing the square. Today's lesson introduces us to the quadratic formula. Okay, this can be used on any quadratic equation to solve it, to find the value of x. So the quadratic formula, I have it wrote down here for you, is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You can sing that to the tune of row, row, row your boat. I guess I'll do it right quick. Just to warn you, I don't have a very good singing voice, but go something like x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Actually, I think that probably goes to Pop Goes the Weasel. But anyway, that's how you can remember the quadratic formula. You honestly don't have to have this memorized, because you'll find it when you're taking the end of course. You're going to find it on your end of course formula chart. And I gave y'all one of those at the beginning of the year, so if you want to go back and look, you'll find the quadratic formula on there. The only thing that you have to know how to do is, you know you're going to use this to solve for x, but you have to know where the value of b, a, and c come from. And every quadratic equation is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay? For example, if I give you 3x squared plus 2x minus 5 equals 0, you can see that the value of a is before the x squared. So in this case, a is 3, b would be 2, and c is negative 5. That's the hardest part, is knowing how to get a, b, and c. And you should already really know that by now, because we've gone over and over. Example 1, we're going to practice solving a quadratic form equation by using the formula. Right, let's solve 2x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals 0. Solve it means we're trying to find the values of x. Okay, so I know that x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Right, over here to the side, I'm going to list my values. A is 2, b is 3, and c is negative 5. And then we're just going to plug into our formula. We're going to have x equals negative, remember I tell you to put parentheses around your variables, so negative 3 plus or minus square root of 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 5, all divided by 2 times 2. Okay, we can break that down further. We can say x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of, and if you're using your calculator, put what's inside the square root. Don't put the square root symbol, just put what's inside it. So put it exactly as I have, parentheses 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 5, enter. We get 49. So the square root of 49 divided by 4. Alright, well, what is the square root of 49? I know it's 7, so my two equations, I'm going to have x equals negative 3 plus 7 divided by 4, or negative 3 minus 7 divided by 4. Write that down. Negative 3 plus 7 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. There's your first solution. And then I have negative 10 divided by 4. Make sure your fractions reduce, so that becomes negative 5/2. There's your second solution. Alright, look at B. To solve it, you want your quadratic equation to be set equal to 0. Well, in this case, I'm not set equal to 0, so I know I can subtract 2x from each side. Okay, so now I'm going to have 0 equals, write it in standard form, start with your highest exponent, x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay, now we have it set equal to 0, so now I can solve by using the quadratic formula. Again, we're just going to write that down. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, my value of a, I can see is 1. B is negative 2. C is negative 3. So now let's just plug in. I'm going to have x equals negative 2 plus or minus negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3 all divided by 2 times 1. Write that down. I have x equals, what's a negative? Negative do? It makes a positive, so I have 2 plus or minus square root of, if you put what's inside the square root in your calculator, you get parentheses negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3, enter, you get 16. All over 2 times 1 is 2. So you can break that down a step further and say x equals 2 plus or minus, what is the square root of 16? It is 4 divided by 2. Since this is a plus or minus 4, you're going to have two different equations. You're going to have 2 plus 4 divided by 2, or you're going to have 2 minus 4 divided by 2. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So there's your first solution. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2 divided by 2, which gives us negative 1. So there's your second solution. There's your two solutions to that quadratic equation. Okay, reviewing the different methods that we have used so far to solve quadratic equations. We've used graphing, we've used taking the square root, and we did completing the square. Now we're doing the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula can be used to solve any quadratic equation. So if you can't remember how to factor, you can't remember how to graph, you can't remember how to square root or complete the square, you can always use the quadratic equation by using this formula right here. It works every time. Okay. Example 2, we're still solving the quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula. So this time we might have to estimate our solution. That means we might have to round it. So let's check. First thing I'm going to do is write down my formula. Right, my value of A is 1. B is negative 2. C is negative 4. Okay, now we're just going to plug in our values into the formula. So I'm going to have x equals negative b, which is negative 2, plus or minus square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 4, all divided by 2 times 1. break that down, I get x equals, a negative negative becomes a positive, so 2 plus or minus square root of, put what's inside the square root inside on your calculator. Don't put the square root sign yet, just put what's inside it. Okay, we're going to have negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 4. What do we get? We get the square root of 20. All divided by 2 times 1 is 2. Square root of 20 does not have a perfect square, so when I break this apart, I'm going to have x equals 2 plus the square root of 20 divided by 2, or 2 minus the square root of 20 divided by 2. You're going to put this right here in your calculator. Do the numerator first. So we're going to say 2 plus square root of 20, enter, then divide it by 2. And you're going to see that x is approximately, if we round to the nearest hundredth, 3.24. Okay, and then we're going to solve this second equation. I'm going to have 2 minus the square root of 20, enter, and then divide it by 2. So x is approximately negative 1.24. There's your two solutions. And then let's talk about the discriminant. What is the discriminant? Well, it says you can use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions of a quadratic equation. And the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. It's basically just what's under the square root sign here. That's called your discriminant. Okay? So to find the discriminant to determine the number of solutions, you have to take b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I made us a chart here. Let's kind of work it out. That way you can see the pattern. My first equation here, I have x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. My value of a is 1, b is negative 4, c is 3. So to define the discriminant, I have b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I'm going to have negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3. Put this in your calculator if you need to. Negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3. We get 4. Okay, well now let's graph. Let's graph this quadratic equation and see how many solutions we're supposed to have. And we're going to go to y equals, and we're going to put in x squared minus 4x plus 3. We graph it. How many solutions do we have? Remember, the solution is where it crosses the x-axis. I can see it crosses in 2 points. So I'm going to have 2 solutions. Okay, let's find the discriminant of this next equation. I can see that a equals 1, b equals 2, c equals 1. Discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So I have 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1. When you put that in your calculator, you get 0. So let's graph that. X squared plus 2x plus 1. Graph. You can see that it crosses the x-axis in 1 point. Okay? Therefore, it's only going to have 1 solution. And then let's find the discriminant of this last equation. I can see that a equals 1, b equals negative 2, c equals 2. And b squared minus 4ac is your discriminant. So I'm going to have negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2. 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2, I get negative 4. Well, if I graph that, I get x squared minus 2x plus 2. Graph it. How many solutions do I have? You can see this parabola never crosses the x-axis. So it don't have any x-intercepts. Therefore, there's going to be no solution. Okay. Well, so now you're asking, well, what does the discriminant tell me? I mean, how do I know that 4 means 2 solutions? How do I know that 0 means 1 solution? How do I know that negative 4 means no solution? You know that because there's a pattern. Okay? If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, which is all your positive numbers, there's 2 solutions. Okay? If b squared minus 4ac equals 0, there's going to be 1 solution. And if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, which means negative numbers, there's no solution. Alright, I restated that for you on this back page. The discriminant of a quadratic equation. If the b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0. In other words, if these are positive numbers. If it equals 0, it's 1 solution. If it's less than 0 or negative numbers, it's going to be no solution. Alright, so let's practice doing that. It says use the discriminant to find the number of solutions. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. I can see the value of a is 3, b is 10, c is 2. Okay, so I'm going to plug in. I'm going to have 10 squared minus 4 times 3 times 2. Put that in your calculator. What do you get? We get 76. 76 is greater than 0. It's a positive number. Therefore, there's 2 solutions. Alright, look at B. Let's find the discriminant. I can see that A equals 9, B equals negative 6, C equals 1. So plug in those values. I have negative 6 squared minus 4 times 9 times 1. And I get 0. If your discriminant is 0, you know there's 1 solution. And then C. B squared minus 4ac. A is 1, B is 1, C is 1. So plug in. I'm going to have 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1. And I get negative 3. Negative 3 is less than 0. It's negative. So there are no solutions. Alright, our physics application, if you're looking on your app, it asks, why do we need to learn this? Who would use this? Well, I know you've all been to a carnival and you've seen the strength test machine where they take that hammer and they pound it down on that bell and they see how far it'll go up to see if it'll ring the bell. Okay, you can use the discriminant to figure out if it's going to reach that bell or not. So, if you're looking at your physics application, you can see the diagram of the person hitting that bell, and you can see that the bell is 20 feet up in the air. It also tells you that the part that he's hitting is already 1 foot off the ground. Okay? And you've got this little dude here, no artist, But he's taking this hammer and he's hitting this. And he's going to see if it'll travel up and ring this bell or not. Okay? It gives you the height function. It says h equals negative 16t squared plus vt plus c. Okay? I can tell you that h is your ending height. V is your velocity. And C is your starting height. Well, what do I want my ending height to be? I want it to be 20 when it ends. When it shoots up, I want it to go up 20 feet. So my H is going to be 20. It says it shoots straight up at an initial velocity of 35 feet per second. It also tells you that it starts 1 foot off the ground. So that's your starting height is 1. So we're just going to plug in these values into our equation. We're going to have 20 equals negative 16t squared plus 35t plus 1. Okay, well, to solve this, to find the discriminant, this has to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 20 from each side. That's going to give me 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 35t minus 19. Okay, now it says to find the discriminant in order to find out if it's going to reach 20. Well, remember, discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. I can see that a equals negative 16, b equals 35, c equals negative 19. So I'm just going to plug these values in. I'm going to have 35 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times negative 19. And then those are big numbers, so I'm definitely going to use my calculator. 35 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times negative 19. I get 9. Well, 9 is positive. It's bigger than 0. Therefore, I know there's 2 solutions. Okay? My 2 solutions, that means I have 2 solutions that I can put in here that will definitely give me 20. Therefore, will this bell ever go up to 20? Yes. Yes, it will. And then our last example here, it's talking about solving a quadratic equation by using different methods. And this is just basically a review of different methods that we've learned. Let's solve x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0 by graphing. So we're going to go to y equals x squared plus 7x plus 6. I'm going to bring up my table. And I'm going to get some points to graph. I'm going to say when x is negative 6, y is 0. X is negative 5, y is negative 4. X is negative 4, y is negative 6. X is negative 2, y is negative 4. And when x is negative 1, y is 0. So let's plot those points. Negative 6, 0. Negative 5, negative 4. Negative 4, negative 6. Negative 2, negative 4. And negative 1, 0. So here's my parabola. So I can see I have 2 solutions, okay? Those solutions are where they cross the x-axis. In this case, x is going to be negative 6 and x is negative 1. Excuse me. Alright, method 2. We're going to solve by factoring. Okay? So I'm going to factor this trinomial. My factors of x squared are x and x. what are my factors of 6? I can have 1 and 6, or I could have 2 and 3. But which of these added together give me 7? It's 1 and 6. So your factors are going to be x plus 1 times x plus 6 equals 0. This is now in the form a times b equals 0. Therefore, you know that either a or b has to be 0 by the zero product property. So I'm going to set both of these equal to 0. I can have x plus 1 equals 0 or x plus 6 equals 0. Subtract 1 from each side, so x is going to equal -1. Subtract 6 from each side, so x equals -6. There's your two solutions. We got the same solution on each one. We just used two different methods. And our last method was by completing the square. Okay? To complete the square, remember, first step, is this in the form x squared plus bx equals c? No, so I have to subtract 6 from each side. So I get x squared plus 7x equals -6. From here, I have to find b divided by 2 and square it. So 7 divided by 2 squared gives me 49 over 4. Okay. Now I have to add the 49 over 4 to each side of the equation. So that gives me x squared plus 7x plus 49 over 4 equals -6 plus 49 over 4. Factor your trinomial. Your factors of x squared are x and x. Your factors of 49 over 4 are 7 over 2, 7 over 2. Because the square root of 49 is 7, the square root of 4 is 2. So now that's going to factor to be x plus 7/2 squared equals -6 plus 49 divided by 4 is 25 over 4. Square root each side to get rid of the squared. So I have x plus 7/2 equals plus or minus 5/2. Square root of 25 is 5, square root of 4 is 2. So my two equations are going to be x plus 7/2 equals positive 5/2, or x plus 7/2 equals -5/2. This is the most complicated way ever, is completing the square. So if I subtract 7/2 from each side, I get x equals -1. If I subtract 7/2 from this side, I get x equals -6. I still get the same solution, but that was a more complicated method. And then we have using the quadratic formula, which can be used on any quadratic equation. Write your formula down. I can see my value of a is 1, b is 7, c is 6. So I'm going to plug in. I'm going to have -7 plus or minus square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6 all over 2 times 1. So x equals -7 plus or minus square root of, I'm just going to put this inside my calculator, 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6. Square root of 25 divided by 2. So we're going to have x equals -7 plus 5 divided by 2, or x equals -7 minus 5 divided by 2. So x equals -2 divided by 2, which gives me -1. or negative 12 divided by 2, which gives me negative 6. Again, we still got the same solutions. It's just showing there's different methods that you can use to solve these. And that's it for today's lesson.